You're going to meet bad people, not evil villains, not obvious monsters, just bad people. People who will drain you, manipulate you, use you, waste your time, destroy your peace if you let them. And the only reason you let them is because you didn't recognize them early enough. Because bad people rarely announce themselves. They don't walk up and say, "I'm going to take advantage of you." They're charming, they're convincing. They have reasons, they have explanations. They make you feel like you're wrong for even questioning them. And by the time you realize what they are, they've already cost you months, sometimes years of your life, energy, trust, resources that you'll never get back. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Begin each day by telling yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." Not because he was pessimistic, but because he was prepared. He knew that bad people exist. And the wise man doesn't waste energy wishing didn't he just learns to recognize them quickly and protect himself accordingly? Epictetus taught his students to observe behavior, not intentions, to trust patterns, not promises, to believe what people do, not what they say. And that's what we're doing today, not judging people's souls, not condemning their worth, just identifying observable patterns, behavioral signs that tell you someone will harm you if you give them access. Because here's the truth. Not everyone deserves your time. Not everyone deserves your trust. Not everyone deserves space in your life. And the sooner you recognize the people who don't, the more of your life you get to keep. So we're going to walk through 5 specific signs, 5 patterns that tell you you're dealing with someone you need distance from. Not one sign, not a bad day, but patterns, repeated behaviors, consistent demonstrations that this person will cost you more than they'll ever give. And once you see these patterns, once you recognize them clearly, you act, you create distance, you protect yourself without explanation, without guilt, without apology. Because protecting yourself from bad people isn't cruel, it's necessary, and it's wise. Let's begin. Sign 1. They never take responsibility. The first sign, the most reliable indicator, is that they never take responsibility for anything. Everything is always someone else's fault. Circumstances, bad luck, other people's actions, never theirs. They lose a job, it's a bad boss. They ruin a relationship. The other person was crazy, demanding, impossible. They fail at something. The system was rigged. The odds were against them. They had no support. And at first, this seems reasonable. Life is hard. Things do go wrong. Sometimes you are treated unfairly, but with bad people, it's not. Sometimes it's always. It's every time without exception. They've left a trail of failures and betrayals and burned bridges. And according to them, they're the victim in every single story. Now listen carefully. This pattern, this refusal to take responsibility, it's not just annoying, it's dangerous, because someone who won't take responsibility for their past won't take responsibility for their future, which means they won't take responsibility for what they do to you. If they hurt you, it'll be your fault. You were too sensitive, you misunderstood. You pushed them to it. If they let you down, you expected too much. You should have known better. You put too much pressure on them. If they lie to you, you made them feel like they couldn't tell the truth. If they betray you, you drove them to it. The person who takes no responsibility is the person who will hurt you and then make you feel responsible for being hurt. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." But you can't take revenge if you're too busy accepting blame for someone else's behavior. So here's what you watch for. Listen to how they talk about their past relationships, their jobs, their failures. Do they ever say, "I messed up, I was wrong, I hurt someone, I should have done better"? Or is it always, "They did this, that happened, I couldn't because adults take responsibility. Even when circumstances were hard, even when others contributed, they still own their part." But bad people, they're allergic to accountability. They will twist, distort, rewrite history to avoid admitting fault. And here's what you do when you spot this pattern. You create distance immediately. You don't try to teach them accountability. You don't try to show them their patterns. You just reduce contact, reduce investment, reduce trust. Because people who won't take responsibility for their past will absolutely refuse to take responsibility for what they do to you, and you deserve better than spending your energy managing someone's inability to own their choices. Epictetus taught, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. But he also taught that you're not complicit in maintaining relationships with people who refuse to grow up. So sign 1, they never take responsibility for anything, and when you see it, believe it and act accordingly. Sign 2, pleasant to you, cruel to others. The second sign, and this one's subtle, is how they treat people who can't benefit them. You need to watch how they treat waiters, bartenders, service workers, subordinates, anyone in a position where they can't fight back, because here's what bad people do. They're charming to you. They're pleasant, respectful, considerate, but that's because they want something from you. Your approval, your help, your network, your resources, something, but watch them with the waiter who can't give them anything. Are they rude, dismissive, condescending? Do they snap their fingers? Do they complain about everything? Do they treat service workers like they're invisible or incompetent? Watch them with people below them at work, people they have power over. Are they fair? Are they kind? Or do they use that power to belittle, to humiliate, to control? Watch how they talk about people when those people aren't around. Do they gossip? Do they mock? Do they tear people down who can't defend themselves? Because this gap between how they treat you and how they treat people who can't benefit them, that gap tells you everything. It tells you that their kindness isn't character, it's strategy. It tells you that the charm they show you isn't real. It's a tool they use to get what they want. And it tells you that the moment you can't benefit them anymore, the moment you're no longer useful, they'll treat you exactly like they treat that waiter. Seneca wrote, associate with people who are likely to improve you. But people who are cruel to those beneath them, they won't improve you. They'll use you. And when they're done using you, they'll discard you with the same contempt. They show everyone else who can't give them what they want. So here's what you watch for. Take them somewhere they have to interact with service staff. See how they behave. Do they say thank you? Do they make eye contact? Do they treat those people with basic respect? Or do they treat them like furniture, like obstacles, like inconveniences? Listen to how they talk about people who aren't present, people who don't have power, people who've left their circle. Do they speak with respect? Or do they tear people down, enjoy the gossip, relish in other people's failures? Because cruelty doesn't stay compartmentalized. If they're cruel to people who can't defend themselves, they're cruel, period. They just hide it from people who still have something they want. And what you do when you see, this is simple, you stop believing their charm is real. You realize you're seeing a performance, not a person, and you understand that you're only receiving kindness as long as you're useful, which means it's not kindness at all. So you create distance, you stop investing, you stop trusting, you stop believing that you're special, that you're the exception, that they'd never treat you the way they treat everyone else, because they would and they will. The moment circumstances change, sign 2, pleasant to you, cruel to others. And when you see it, believe what it's telling you about who they actually are. Sign 3, everything is transactional. The third sign is that everything with them is transactional. There's no real reciprocity, no genuine generosity, no giving without expectation. They help you, but there's always a price, always a debt, always a reminder that you owe them. They do you a favor and immediately they're asking for one back. Not eventually, not naturally, immediately, and the favor they ask is always bigger than what they gave. They keep score meticulously. They remember every small thing they did and forget everything you did for them. With good people, there's flow. You help them, they help you. Sometimes you give more, sometimes they do, and nobody's counting because the relationship has value beyond transaction, but with bad people, every interaction is a negotiation. Every gift has strings, every kindness is an investment. They expect returned with interest. And here's why this is dangerous, because transactional people, they don't actually care about you. They care about what you can do for them. You're not a person, you're a resource, and the moment you stop being useful, the moment the cost of maintaining you exceeds the benefit they get, they're gone. No loyalty, no consideration, no looking back, because they never saw you as someone who mattered. They saw you as something they could use. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Reject your sense of injury, and the injury itself disappears." But transactional people, they're constantly creating injury, constantly taking more than they give, constantly keeping score in a game where they always win. So here's what you watch for when they help you do. They bring it up constantly. Do they remind you what they did? Do they use it as leverage to ask for bigger favors? When you help them do, they remember. Do they reciprocate, or do they take it as expected, as something you owed them anyway? Do they disappear when you need help, but reappear when they need something? Do they treat the relationship like a bank account where they're constantly making withdrawals but never deposits? Because real relationships, they're not 50-50 all the time. Sometimes it's 80-20, sometimes 20-80. But over time, it balances. And neither person is counting, but transactional people, they're always counting, sighing, and they're always making sure you're giving more than you're getting. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to understanding of ourselves." But sometimes what irritates us isn't about us. It's just that we're dealing with someone who sees humans as resources. And when you recognize this, when you see the transactional pattern, you stop investing emotionally. You realize this isn't a relationship, it's a negotiation, and you're losing. So you step back, you stop doing favors, you stop making yourself available, you stop treating them like a friend when they only treat you like a tool. Because transactional people, they'll take everything you give and always ask for more until you have nothing left. And then they'll leave anyway. Sign 3. Everything is transactional, no real reciprocity. And when you see it, stop giving to someone who only knows how to take membership. Sign 4. They test boundaries constantly. The fourth sign, and this one's critical, is that they test boundaries constantly. They violate small boundaries to see if you'll enforce them and if you don't. If you let the small violations slide, they escalate. They show up late, not once, not occasionally, but consistently, testing if you'll keep waiting or call them out. They borrow things and don't return them, testing if you'll ask for them back or just let it go. They make small, inappropriate comments, testing if you'll laugh uncomfortably or tell them it's not okay. They ask for small favors that cross professional boundaries or personal comfort zones, testing if you'll say no, and every time you let it slide, every time you don't enforce the boundary they crossed. They learn that your boundaries are negotiable, that your no means maybe that your limits can be pushed, and so they push further. The small boundary violations become medium ones, become large ones, until they're doing things that 6 months ago you would have thought impossible, but they got there through small escalations that you didn't stop. Epictetus taught, "We are disturbed not by events, but by our views of them." But sometimes we're not disturbed enough. We let things slide, we make excuses, we don't want to seem difficult or sensitive or harsh. And bad people, they count on this, they count on you, being too polite, too nice, too uncomfortable with conflict to call them out early. So they keep pushing, keep testing, keep violating until they find your actual boundary, the one you'll finally enforce, and by then they've taken so much that even your actual boundary feels unreasonable even to you. So here's what you watch for. Do they show up late consistently? Do they cancel plans regularly? Do they forget commitments? Do they ask you to bend rules, make exceptions, do special favors? Do they cross small lines? And when you notice, do they laugh it off? Say you're being too sensitive, say it wasn't a big deal, because that's the test they violate. They see how you react if you enforce. They either respect it or they leave. But either way, you've protected yourself. If you don't enforce, they've learned you can be pushed, and they will push. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The first rule is to keep an untroubled spirit." But you can't keep untroubled spirit if you're constantly accommodating people who don't respect your boundaries. So here's what you do the first time they test a boundary. You enforce it immediately, firmly, without apology, without over-explaining. They're late. You leave. They borrow and don't return. You ask for it. They make inappropriate comments. You name it. They ask for unreasonable favors. You say no, and you watch what happens. Good people, they apologize. They course correct. They respect the boundary. Bad people, they get defensive. They make you the problem. They escalate or they disappear. And either way, you've learned what you needed to know. Sign 4, they test boundaries constantly, and your job is to enforce them. The first time, every time, without negotiation, because people who respect you won't need to be taught where your boundaries are, and people who don't respect you won't honor them, even if you teach them. Sign 5, words and actions never align. The fifth and final sign, the most reliable predictor, is that their words and actions never align. They say one thing and do another, consistently, chronically, without shame. They tell you they'll call, they don't. They promise they'll help. They disappear. They say you matter, but they're never available. They claim they value honesty, but they lie about everything, even small things that don't matter. They talk about their principles, their values, their characters, but their behavior demonstrates the opposite. They say they're loyal, but they betray. They say they're honest, but they deceive. They say they care, but they're selfish. And the gap between words and actions, that gap tells you everything. Because words are easy, anyone can say anything, but actions require effort, require consistency, require actually being who you claim to be. And bad people, they know that words are cheaper than actions. So they've become experts at saying what people want to hear while doing whatever benefits them. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than reality." But with these people, the suffering is real, because you keep believing their words. You keep hoping the actions will change. You keep giving them chances based on what they say while ignoring what they do. And every time they let you down, they have an explanation. Every time they break a promise, they have an excuse. Every time actions contradict words, they have a reason, and you want to believe them because the words are so good, because the promises are so compelling, because the version of them that exists in words is exactly who you want them to be. But that version doesn't exist. Only the actions exist, only the pattern exists, only what they actually do. Over and over again, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. Bad people waste your time arguing endlessly about what they are, what they intended, what they meant, while never actually being it." So here's what you watch for. Do they follow through on small commitments? Do they show up when they say they will? Do they do what they promise? Or is there always a gap, always an excuse, always a reason why the words didn't become actions? Do they talk about who they want to be, but never do the work to become it? Do they describe themselves in ways that don't match how they actually behave? Because people lie, but patterns don't. Words lie, but actions don't. If someone tells you they're reliable, but they're constantly flaking, believe the actions. If someone tells you they care, but they're never there when you need them, believe the actions. If someone tells you who they are, but behaves like someone else, believe the behavior. Epictetus taught, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Bad people do the opposite. They explain constantly, embody never. And here's what you do when you spot this pattern. You stop listening to words. You only watch actions. They promise something, you say, "Okay, let's see." And you watch. If the action follows the word repeatedly, consistently, then maybe you trust a little. But if the pattern is words without actions, promises without follow-through, claims without evidence, you stop believing the words entirely. You start treating everything they say as noise and everything they do as signal, and when the signal shows you who they are, you believe its sign. 5 words and actions never align. Chronic lying, even about small things, and when you see it, trust the pattern, not the promises. What to do when you recognize these signs. Now you have all 5. Never takes responsibility, pleasant to you, cruel to others. Everything is transactional constantly. Tests boundaries, words and actions don't align, and here's what's important. One sign might be a bad day, a rough patch, a moment of weakness. But patterns are who someone is. So when you see multiple signs, when you see consistent patterns, when you recognize you're dealing with a bad person, here's what you do first. You trust what you're seeing. You don't gaslight yourself. You don't make excuses for them. You don't give them endless chances. You trust your observations. Second, you create distance, not with drama, not with explanations, not with confrontations. Just quiet, consistent distance. You become less available. You respond slower. You invest less energy. You share less information. You create space. Third, you enforce boundaries immediately, firmly, clearly. No apologies, no over-explaining, just enforcement. They violate you, call it. They push you, hold the line. They test you, stand firm. Fourth, you stop expecting change. Stop hoping they'll become different. Stop giving chances based on potential. You accept that this is who they are and you plan accordingly. And fifth, you protect your peace. You realize that not everyone deserves your time, your trust, your energy, your investment. And there's no shame in protecting yourself from people who've shown you they'll only cause harm. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like that." You don't become bitter, you don't become cynical, you don't start treating everyone like they're bad. You just become discerning, you recognize patterns earlier, you protect yourself faster, you invest in people who've earned it, and you create distance from people who haven't. Because here's the truth. The Stoics understood deeply, you can't control other people, you can't change them, you can't fix them, you can't make bad people good. Through the force of your love, your patience, your understanding, all you can control is whether you give them access, whether you let them close, whether you continue investing in people who've shown you clearly they'll only take. Seneca wrote, "Hang on to your youthful enthusiasms. You'll be able to use them better when you're older. Don't let bad people drain your enthusiasm, your energy, your capacity to trust. Save it for people who've earned it, for people who demonstrate character through consistent action, not just compelling words. The discernment you need. This isn't about judging everyone. This isn't about being paranoid. This isn't about cutting people off at the first sign of imperfection. This is about discernment, about pattern recognition, about protecting your peace from people who've consistently demonstrated they'll disturb it. Epictetus taught, some things are within our power and some things are not. Other people's character. That's not in your power, but who you allow close to you, who you invest time in, who you trust. With your peace, that's completely within your power. And wise people, they use that power. They recognize bad people early. They create distance quickly. They protect themselves without guilt. Because every hour you spend with someone who drains you, who manipulates you, who uses you, is an hour you don't spend with people who build you up, who respect you, who value you. Every ounce of energy you waste on bad people is energy you don't have for good people, for yourself, for what actually matters. So be discerning, be watchful, be protective of your peace. When you see the signs, never takes responsibility, cruel to those beneath them. Everything transactional, constant boundary testing, words and actions. Misaligned, you trust what you're seeing. You create distance, you protect yourself, and you do it without guilt, without apology, without explanation, because you don't owe access to people who've shown you they'll only cause harm. Stay focused, stay grounded. Not everyone deserves your time, not everyone deserves your trust. Recognize the signs, early act on them quickly, and protect your peace from people who've proven they'll only disturb it. These 5 signs, they're not guesses, they're not theories. They're patterns proven through observation, through experience, through thousands of years of human behavior. Trust them, trust yourself, and trust that creating distance from bad people isn't cruelty, it's wisdom.